In a small, quiet corner of the world, where the streets were still damp from the recent rain, the city felt like it was holding its breath. The world outside was colder now, as though it was waiting for something to change. Perhaps, the way the sky felt just before a storm, heavy and restless, full of unspoken thoughts. But the storm had already come. Not of clouds, but of silence. The kind of silence that blankets you when everything you know starts slipping away, when every step forward feels like you're sinking into the very earth you walk on. It was the year 1922. A year that, to some, felt like the end of the world itself. The Spanish flu, an invisible, insidious thing, was sweeping through cities, villages, and towns alike, taking the lives of the young and the old without warning. People whispered in fear, barely daring to speak its name. The world was familiar but not the same. The streets, once filled with the hum of busy lives, were now ghostly quiet, save for the occasional cough or the creak of an old door closing behind a family too afraid to leave. Newspapers were filled with only one headline: the plague of the century. It came in waves. One after another. The death toll grew higher every day, and the fear clung to every corner of every city, suffocating the spirit of the people. Families were torn apart, businesses shut down, and schools were closed indefinitely. Entire communities vanished under the weight of the virus. Hospitals were overwhelmed, the streets littered with the sick, the dying, and the dead. People lined up outside clinics, clutching their chests in agony, gasping for air that was no longer enough. It felt as though the world itself had stopped turning, as though the virus had stolen away everything good in life and left only grief in its wake. Amidst the chaos, there was Amelia. She was not unlike the others, young, tired, and struggling to make sense of a world that seemed to be breaking down at the seams. She worked as a nurse at a small clinic on the outskirts of town, a place that had become little more than a hospice for the dying. The days had blurred together for her, each one folding into the next, like pages in a book that no longer had a clear beginning or end. She had seen so many lives taken, so many faces blur in the haze of fever and pain, yet something inside her, some deep, stubborn part of her, refused to let go. But that was before her father fell ill. She had been with him in his final hours, holding his hand as he breathed shallowly, his skin growing colder with each passing minute. He had always been the strong one, the one who had taught her to stand tall, to face the world with courage, even when the odds seemed impossible. But now, as he lay in that small, dimly lit room, she realized that there was no more strength to be had. Her father, the pillar of her life, was gone. And with his passing, a part of her felt like it, too, had died. The grief, thick and suffocating, hung over her like a heavy fog. The Spanish flu had taken her father, just as it had taken so many others, and now it felt as though it was slowly claiming her as well. There was no way to escape it. No way to fight it. And so, Amelia did what so many others had done, she withdrew. She stopped going out into the world. She stopped answering the calls of her patients. She stopped hoping. There was no point anymore, was there? What was left to fight for when everything was already lost? It was during this time of silence, this time of withdrawal, that she met him. His name was Mr. Foster, though no one quite knew who he was. He didn't look like much, just a man of average height and quiet demeanor, always dressed in a worn, gray coat, with a weathered hat pulled low over his brow. He appeared on her doorstep one rainy afternoon, just as she was beginning to pack away her father's things, as though he had simply materialized out of nowhere. "If you let it." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as though he could see every crack in her soul, every shattered piece of hope. "The world is not over, Amelia. Not yet. There are still things worth living for. Even now. And even if it feels like there's nothing left, no one left, there is still hope. It's just waiting for you to find it." Amelia sat there in the stillness of that moment, letting his words sink into her, like rain falling on parched earth. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't even a promise that everything would be okay. But it was enough. That evening, as the rain continued to patter softly against the window, Amelia made a decision. She would keep going. She didn't know exactly why, but she knew she couldn't stop. She couldn't let herself give up, not when there was still a chance, a small, fragile chance, that the world could heal. The very next day, the government announced that a breakthrough had been made. They had created an antidote. The Spanish flu, finally, was being stopped. Slowly but surely, people began to recover. The world didn't come back to life overnight, but it began to stir. And so did Amelia. In the weeks that followed, she returned to the clinic. She didn't feel whole, not yet, but she felt something like hope. And that was enough to carry her forward. Mr. Foster disappeared as quietly as he had come, leaving no trace but a few soft words that lingered in her heart. She never saw him again, but somehow, she knew he had been exactly what she needed, a quiet presence, a gentle guide through the storm. And one day, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, Amelia stood on the front step of her clinic, watching the world slowly heal. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew this: she would be there to meet it, one small step at a time. The world was broken, yes. But it was still worth saving. "I heard you've been struggling," he said, his voice soft but steady, like the gentle rustling of leaves in a forgotten garden. He spoke in a way that suggested he was not a stranger, not really. As if he knew exactly what she was going through, without needing her to say a word. Amelia couldn't find the words to respond. She stood frozen, unsure of what to make of him. But there was something in his presence, a quiet, unshakable peace, that made her hesitate. "I've seen it," he continued, his eyes meeting hers with a knowing look. "I've seen the way the world breaks, the way it falls apart, piece by piece. And I've seen the way people try to hold on, even when everything is slipping through their fingers. But I've also seen something else. I've seen people survive. I've seen them stand up again." She shook her head, overwhelmed by the weight of her own grief. "How? How do you survive this? How do you live in a world like this?" Mr. Foster did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, sitting down on the worn armchair beside her. He was still, as though time had paused for just a moment, giving them the space to breathe. "Let me tell you a story," he said quietly, his voice steady but gentle. "I had a wife once. A beautiful, strong woman. We were happy, or so I thought. But then the virus came. And it took her from me. Just like it took your father. I tried to hold on, to fight it, to save her. But in the end, it was too late. She was gone. Just like that." Amelia looked at him, feeling her heart tighten, but she didn't interrupt. There was something in his words that felt familiar, something that resonated deep within her. "For a long time, I thought that was it for me," he continued, his voice softer now. "I thought there was nothing left to live for. I thought I'd never see the point in anything again. But one day, I woke up and realized something. I realized that grief, as heavy as it is, does not have to be the end. It can be a beginning."